Good evening, everyone. Thank you and a very warm welcome for joining the webinar today on a very critical and important topic on CMMI for AI maturity, because it's all about building trusted, scalable, and responsible AI organizations. Very warm welcome to the webinar, and thank you for taking the time to join us. To introduce myself, my name is Rahul Turki. I'm the partner and the operations consulting leader for Thornton Bharat. And this is actually happening at a very appropriate time, and I would really like to thank our team from ISACA to be here as well and bringing out a very important part of AI governance. As you're all aware, artificial intelligence has rapidly evolved from supporting technology to now actually becoming a very strategic business imperative. It's transforming how organizations would make decisions, improve productivity, deliver very superior customer experiences, right? AI has now enabled businesses to automate a lot of routine tasks, uncover insights from vast amounts of data, and make much faster and informed decisions, right? So it's also driving innovation by enabling a lot of product creation, services innovation, and a lot of disrupting the operating models, the business models across the organizations. So as organizations continue to embrace digital transformation and imbibe AI in their day-to-day journey, AI has evolved to become a very critical enabler to agility, competitiveness, and sustainable growth. But as the organizations across industries accelerate AI adoption, I think the focus is now rapidly shifting from experimentation to enterprise value creation. So the question now, and as we speak to some of our clients, the question doesn't remain whether you want to adopt AI or not, but in what manner can it be adopted so that it's reliable, it's governed, it's secure, it's capable of delivering very consistent business outcomes. That's why, precisely where CMMI for AI maturity, or AIM as we call it, provides a very distinctive advantage. During the session today, we will explore how CMMI for AI maturity is enabling organizations to establish a very robust AI development and governance practices, improve predictability, quality, manage AI-related risks, strengthen compliance, and build trust with stakeholders and customers. We'll also share some practical insights, scenarios, and perspective on how organizations can leverage and scale their AI capabilities. So, we'll also briefly touch upon the latest enhancements to the framework, what's the structure, how the model aligns with their organization's AI ecosystem. Many organizations who have experienced, CMMI earlier, we can look at how the AIM methodology or the appraisal methodology, and what are those qualification requirements, and what are some of the best practices from one of the most trusted process improvement framework. Lastly, at GT Bharat and as business excellence practice, we've been working with organizations to drive a lot of operational excellence work around process maturity, enterprise-wide transformation. We're combining a lot of our process knowledge, process expertise, along with AI governance, digital enablement to help clients build a very future-ready organization. So I'll not take a lot of your time. We really appreciate your participation. Look forward to an engaging discussion. My request to all the participants is there is there's a chat bot where you can put in your questions. We'll take all the questions towards the end, and we'll try and answer as many as possible. Now, to introduce my fellow speakers from ISACA, I'd like to introduce Ron Lair. Ron Lair is CMMI Institute's Vice President of CMMI Global Strategies. Many of you would have known Ron from his tenure because he spent more than 40 years of expertise in continuous process improvement, systems and software engineering, cybersecurity, resilience, service and operations management, and is also a very, very important member of the AIM framework. In this role, Ron also identifies and develops transformative global growth opportunities for ISACA product suite. Ron was also very pivotal in development of the CMMI performance solutions and the product suites that you experience today. He's also been a chief architect for the current version of CMMI version 2.0 and upcoming AIM maturity framework. So there could not be anyone better than Ron to present his views on the CMMI for AI maturity framework. Without any delay, Ron, over to you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, everyone. It's very nice to be here. I would like to say first and foremost, thank you for inviting me to attend today and to speak about how AIM is working for organizations. I've been very excited about being part of this journey with a lot of organizations at this point. And I would be remiss to say also thank you for all of you who, with your patience on the previous version of this webinar we tried to hold when I got held up with some travel constraints. So appreciate you all resetting and joining today. So as Raul said, we're going to go through and cover a very brief overview of CMMI, just get you all grounded for those of you who are not familiar with CMMI. And then I'm going to deep dive right into CMMI AIM, which stands for CMMI Artificial Intelligence Maturity. We'll go over some of the technical highlights, deep dive into some of the model content. I'm going to do a quick demo of our new model viewer so you can see that. And we'll answer, hopefully, I've already got a handful of questions that I think we'll cover as we go. And then I'll do a quick recap and conclusion, and then we'll jump right into Q&A after that. So CMMI was built for one reason and one reason only. McKinsey defines capabilities, anything an organization does well to drive meaningful business results. Every organization has capabilities. Most of them don't have a process to measure how well those capabilities are working against best practices and which ones drive higher performance. And you can see we did this, we refreshed this survey back in 2024. There's a lot of alarming metrics on here in terms of things like 41% not tracking progress against documented plans and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why CMMI came into being. And we basically have been curating the CMMI now for many, many years. It's done through community review, done through community input with best practices from organizations adopting some of these capabilities and driving what are the best things that need to be focused on. Now, the model is a what to do framework. It is not a how to do, but it does provide very consistent performance benchmarking and measurement across to compare capabilities across organizations, industries. And that is where our CMMI appraisal methodology comes into play. In a nutshell, CMMI is currently 5 integrated components in what we call the CMMI Performance Solutions ecosystem. And the model is at the heart of it. You can see here at the top, it has an open architecture, built-in value statements for every practice area and all practices. So to recap, there are currently 31 practice areas in the CMMI and 276 practices across those 31. There are domains now in 8 major areas, including data, development, people, safety, security, services, supplier, and virtual work environments. All that activity is supported by core content plus domain-specific information. And there's a lot of example work products and example activities that people can follow to customize on how they will adopt the model. So it's a very flexible model from that perspective. Coupled with the model is our CMMI appraisal method. We also refer to it as the appraisal method definition document, or MDD, which includes several toolkits and support functions and tools. In that, there's a standard performance report template. I think those of you who have been through CMMI appraisals will be familiar with that. That's a required output as part of our appraisal method. And what it does is basically corresponds the maturity level or the capability level assigned to the actual performance outcome. So CMMI is not just a compliance-based model anymore. It is now a performance outcomes-based model, which is why we changed the name to CMMI Performance Solutions. Finally, the last 3 components, training and certification. We have an internal and a complete certification pathway. Supporting the tool, we've got several systems in place. I'm going to show you one today, which includes a new interactive model viewer. So the CMMI used to be a book and a PDF, and now it's an online data experience with a complete data model behind it. And yes, we are working on adding some AI agents to the CMMI at this point. And lastly, things that weren't in place before, basic adoption guidance on the how do I go about adopting CMMI in a cost-effective and results-oriented manner. So global impact of CMMI. Now, this is based on 6 years of data. That performance report that I mentioned covers this information, and we go through and update this annually. We cleared just over 5,000 appraisals globally in 2025. CMMI itself has been around for close to 26 years. When you add the software CMMI or the software CMM to that, which was its predecessor, you're looking at more like 32, 33 years. Since 2020, we've cleared over 24,000 appraisals. And the numbers that I really want to point out on this slide are the two lower ones in the lower left corner in the middle here. We ask organizations to submit their business objectives in this performance report that's required for appraisals. In the 6 years of this data, 83,000 objectives have been reported. And of those, 92% of those objectives have either been achieved or a 4% margin of about to be achieved because an appraisal is snapshot in time. And those are telling numbers. I don't know of any other framework or standard in the world that can actually show the data to support the fact that organizations can say, I have these clear and important business objectives, and I know that I have a 92% chance of actually succeeding at achieving them or exceeding them because I'm using CMMI. CMMI is delivered through our CMMI Partner Global Network. There are 300 of those registered globally. These have people who have sponsored lead appraisers, instructors, and consultants that are helping organizations adopt CMMI. This logo field gives you just kind of an overview of who all has been involved with CMMI. We update this on a regular basis as well. Many of these organizations have been very, very deeply involved in the development of CMMI from the early days. Companies like NASA, branches of the U.S. military and other groups, GAO, but also for the AIM pilots and the AIM effort, I'd point out that IBM Consulting has also been a key player, and they're actually a founding sponsor for what we've done with the AI working group. So we're very happy to have them and all these organizations who have been adopting CMMI. Many of them continue to use CMMI even if they're not seeing contractual requirements because they know that it actually gives them the performance results that they're looking for. All right, this is just a quick timeline to show you the pedigree of CMMI. I'm not going to go through this in detail. Dial forward now to where we are today. CMMI AIM was launched back in June of this year. We had our annual Capability Creates conference in Washington, D.C., and launched the product at that point. And that included the 2 training classes that go with AIM, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So we continue to keep the model updated. We continue to keep the framework updated. And you can see here, when ISACA acquired CMMI Institute back in 2016, nearly 10 years ago now, we've been working very hard to keep the model current and applicable and relevant to business around the world. And this is not just IT. This is all types of businesses have adopted CMMI. That includes things from restaurants to transportation, manufacturing, medical device, and so forth. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Most of you are familiar with, and this is one of those slides that a lot of the other maturity models out there in the world emulate this same approach. So these are our 5 maturity levels. They're also the same as our capability levels. But CMMI is the standard that set this as a gold standard for industry. A lot of the organizations that I talk to, when they are looking at other frameworks, their comments are, we like this particular framework, but what we do is we use the CMMI maturity levels to measure how well we're doing against it. So the 5 levels that you see here, where you can start out at an unpredictable level, and then at level 2, you manage to the project level. Level 3, you're now organizational in focus. And level 4 and 5 talks about our high maturity approach, which is also unique to CMMI. I don't know of any other standard out there that has this integrated into how the model works in terms of high maturity and being able to predict your performance results. Now, AIM follows these same pathways. In the current model, AIM content is in all 31 practice areas and about 165 of those 276 practices. So it's a vast majority of the practices. And you can look at AIM from a level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, and 5 perspective. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. This just gives you a quick overview. We have 17 practice areas that are called core. These are also laid out by maturity levels, as you can see here. And these are some of the most common practice areas that organizations across the world use to achieve their capability results. Things like governance, implementation, infrastructure, managing performance and measurement is a very critical one to the CMMI. It's kind of the central one around performance measurement. So that's in place for every adoption and every appraisal for organizations. And these are the things that also allow you to integrate with and support and enable other frameworks like ISO 9000, ISO 42001 if you're dealing with AI, ISO 31000 if you're dealing with risk management, and so on. So CMMI works very well with these other frameworks. We also now have domain-specific best practices customized for very unique business needs. And you can see on the graph on the left here that organizations have been growing in terms of the adoption of the 8 domains that we have, and we increased that adoption rate by 139% last year. And this covers areas like data development, which is the second one here from the top. That's the one that's the most commonly adopted and appraised to, but the other one is services. And then we have supplier management, virtual, security, safety, people, and data. Now, the previous versions of previous models of CMMI, we had the CMMI that came over when ISACA purchased it from Carnegie Mellon, but also the data management maturity model and the people CMM also came over. Those have been preserved, and any of the content that was no longer relevant was removed, but those have been integrated now fully into the model. So data, people, development, services, supplier management, all were separate models. Now they're all integrated into this single model and single approach. And these are just another view of our domains. These are the practice areas that are in them. For example, on the left, the services domain says 4 practice areas around incident resolution prevention, continuity, strategic service management, and service delivery management. And with what we're doing with AIM, given the importance of both security and data, AIM does require the data domain and the security domain as part of the appraisal process. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I'm just going to give you a little bit of foreshadowing on that. You have to select either the services or development domains as a primary. You can do them both together, and we did have a couple of organizations for our pilots for AIM go through and do that, and then they've also included data and security. All right, so I'm going to give you a very quick recap of the performance results from the last performance report in 2025, and then we'll jump right into AIM. So I mentioned we have just under 25,000 approved appraisals in the last 6 years. The biggest numbers that I already covered here were that 83,000 business objectives that the organizations reported to the independent appraisal teams, and the teams verified that 92% of those objectives were either achieved or soon to be achieved, and they were reporting this through adoption and reported outcomes. The top categories that organizations are measuring include things like defect density. You can see here a drop of defect density by 22%, increase in overall productivity, 13%, project level productivity by 11%, better schedule variance by 13%, on-time delivery at 9%. And most organizations are focusing in 5 categories: quality performance, productivity, technical performance, financial performance, and operational performance. I don't know if I could sum up a better way to say those are the things that most businesses care about, right? So this is what CMMI is doing. It's demonstrating very consistent value as a performance improvement and governance framework and not simply a compliance tool. It helps actually organizations achieve this not only in whatever capability area and capabilities that they're targeting, but if they wanted to branch out and move into other areas like cybersecurity or AI, CMMI gives them a very clear evolutionary pathway to do so. All right, so the top categories of improvement, I kind of covered this already. This is just a graphical view of this, and these slides will be made available to you all afterwards. Basically, quality accounts for just over 30% of all the improvement objectives in 2025, productivity just under 23%, but we saw an increase in both of those as we went through, and you can see the top categories that I mentioned already here. Now, which industries are using CMMI? Traditionally, yes, computer programming, consultancy, IT-related information systems. That's the vast majority, but other different types of organizations also use CMMI, telecommunications, scientific and technical activities. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States uses CMMI in our MDAT program, which is the Medical Device Discovery Appraisal Program, where companies who are doing manufacturing of medical devices are going through this volunteer program and actually seeing better results for outcomes of their medical devices. So, and there's a whole category of other here. We track these by International Standard Industrialization Classification Code. So we can go in and give a pretty detailed view of what types of organizations. And there's a breakout of that information in the back of the performance report. And then there was a misnomer or myth in the past that CMMI was only adoptable by large organizations because the assumption was only large organizations could actually afford to do this. The truth of the matter is that almost 83% of the organizations doing CMMI, sorry, not 80, 89%, are actually less than 100 FTEs, and of those 72% are less than 50 FTEs. So you're seeing this, that CMMI is relevant to not only large organizations over 500, but it's also very relevant to small organizations. And that means CMMI can be adopted in a very affordable way. Now, I want to jump into AIM. AIM, as Rahul very well summed up, is about sustainable innovation through AI and achieving and conforming organizational AI maturity and performance outcomes. This can be done at the project level. It can be done at a functional level. It can also be done at the organizational wide level. AI technologies present both significant opportunities and risks for a project or organization. A successful AI initiative recognizes this and actually builds in and acknowledges the balance needed to strike between risk and opportunity to get repeatable process, strong governance, robust infrastructure, accurate data, trained personnel, and very well-defined performance goals. And that's the heart of what CMMI Performance Solution is all about. So why do we need AIM? Well, first and foremost, AIM is ready now. As I said, we've launched it. We've gone through several pilots with it. But we're seeing that AI investment and adoption, as Rahul said at the beginning, is accelerating faster than most governance maturity in most organizations. So the adoption cycle for AI is greatly outpacing the governance capabilities of most organizations. Many of the enterprises who are using AI lack repeatable processes, accountability, data discipline to address that. And CMMI is very well covered to address those activities. There's strong brand equity with a global base, partner base. It's a trusted maturity model heritage, and it goes well beyond IT and software. It can go into services, supplier, security, data, people, and more. So we went in and looked at a study that the Gartner Group had done back in January of this year. Very, very enlightening organization. And it was basically to identify what are the top 10 business benefits expected from AI. This chart is basically a summary of those top 10. These are what organizations think that they're going to get when they adopt AI. Clear, consistent, measurable ROI, faster innovation, development, execution, and speed to market, reduced labor and development costs, lower supply costs and risk, better business performance, and the ability to balance benefits and risk in AI adoption. Now, likewise, we went in and we asked ChatGPT, what are the top 10 business risks from AI adoption? And these 3 bullets pretty much summarize that. AI adoption introduces data privacy bias, regulatory compliance risks that can lead to legal exposure, reputational harm, and loss of customer trust. Can also create operational dependency and intellectual property risks that can disrupt performance, weaken human oversight, and raise ownership concerns. And it can create cost, workforce, ethical, reputational risk. I get a lot of, I actually have a couple agents working for me, AI agents that are gathering information like this. And I'm seeing daily reports of organizations who are, oh, we're going to stop doing AI now because it's costing us too much. We're not getting the kind of results out of it and so forth. And that's what AIM is targeted to address, those kinds of challenges. So targeted outcomes. AIM is there to deliver measurable value through a structured and governance scalable approach. It gives you visibility and control, consistency and scalability, and measurable improvements. So it enables an organization to move from maybe I've got one or two projects experimenting with AI. They're doing some things that are pretty nice that seem to be working for them. But how do I do that on a scalable level across the organization so that I'm actually getting the real ROI that I want out of it? That's where AIM comes into play. It gives you the structured view of risk and governance gaps. It improves your decision making for AI investments. It helps standardize how AI practices across teams, projects, and domains are working. It reduces fragmentation. It actually works very well with other AI frameworks. For example, we'll talk a little bit about ISO 42001, the management system standard for AI adoption. And we do have a crosswalk mapping with AIM to ISO 42001 and three others that we have bundled. So all of this is just basically saying CMMI provides this clear roadmap for maturity and improvement from the project, individual, functional level, all the way up to the organizational level. These are our targeted users, obviously organizations interested in mature AI capabilities, but we're also focusing, and part of my new role is to focus on where regulatory agencies and governing bodies can actually leverage CMMI AIM for how they're enabling supplier evaluation, how they're targeting and addressing different sectors of their economy. We also are helping individuals, and ISACA has an entire set of core credentials around AI that support AIM and work with AIM. So if you think about it, we have kind of a perfect solution to both individual capability building. So individuals can take these ISACA credentials and AIM credentials and certifications and couple it with the AIM approach, and now you have a holistic view of both the organizational and the individual perspective for building better capability. We're also working with strategic partners across the organizations and across the world, including Grant Thornton and others. And then our CMMI partners will be providing AIM training and so forth available to services and the appraisals coming up. Now, AIM appraisals, this week is a banner week because in 3 days we are planning to go live with AI AIM appraisals. The new updates to the CMMI appraisal system will happen, and we will be releasing the new version of the appraisal method definition document. All right, so how did we create AIM? Very briefly, we've done it the way we've done all of our content over the years with CMMI. It's been created through a AI working group. These are volunteers from all over the world. We had 25 plus individuals, and this was kicked off 2 years ago. Prior to that, we had been doing research on AI, including supporting work from ISACA. IBM joined us early on as a founding sponsor of this activity. And we had roles involved everywhere from CEOs and founders to partners, training managers, certified CMMI lead appraisers and instructors, but also specific risk managers and people who are basically responsible for AI adoption in their organization. The geographic representation was broad: India, US, Taiwan, Turkey, Ireland, Spain, Mexico. You can see are basically global in nature. This is about 100 different companies that we were involved in. So one of the key pieces that we have in AIM is defining AI usage scenarios. And what the working group found when we did this research was that there are basically 4 types of usage scenarios. And these are the heart of how we do CMMI appraisals. We identify how AI is being used in the organization based on one of these 4. Starting on the left, autonomous augmentation. This is where AI is performing the activity solely on its own. There's no human watching it. It's just functioning, it's automated, and it's cranking its stuff out. Verified augmentation. This is where AI is performing an activity, but there is human oversight. Typically, a subject matter expert in that particular area that the AI is performing is watching and seeing and making sure that the AI is actually performing. And I'll note here is that before, most organizations who are doing this well move from verified to autonomous, they actually have those SMEs verify that AI output before they move to that state, and they periodically check it after that. So while it is autonomous, it is also verified on a regular basis. And then you have support augmentation, where humans are using AI basically to assist them with the activities. And then lastly, AI solution. This is an activity or process where AI is being used to actually create an AI solution. And this can include any of the other three scenarios. So keep these in mind, because these four scenarios are critical to how we do AIM appraisals. In the CMMI AIM appraisal world, we are looking at four domains. I mentioned that at the beginning. Development and services are, you have to pick one or both. You can pick either dev or services or combine them. But because of the importance in large learning models and other activities, privacy, security data that AI introduces, data and security were considered to be critical to how AI is being adopted in organizations. So when we're looking at appraisals, all four of these domains have to be in play. There may be reason to include the other four, like people and suppliers, depending on your business objectives from an appraisal perspective. So where is the AI content in the CMMI? I mentioned there are 31 practice areas in the model today. AIM is in all 31 of those practice areas and in about 165 of those. And it's in the additional explanatory information, the example activities and work products, but it's also found at the additional required information, both at the practice area level and at the practice level. And what that means is AI, when it's present there and it's required, that becomes what the appraisal team has to appraise to. So they're looking at how the intent and value of a practice area or practice statement is being met with the augmentation of AI thrown in. So applying AI applies to every practice. So when you're looking at a particular practice area, for example, risk in this scenario, you're saying that, okay, at risk PA, there is practice area information that is required for AI for risk. That means that as you're going through and looking at the required practice information from an appraisal perspective, and you're looking at that AI context-specific information, for example, in risk 3.2 and risk 3.5, there is AI context-specific information required at risk 3.2, and at 3.5, the PA level, that practice takes on basically the conditions and the criteria that are present at the PA level. So that's how the model is set up to work. It allows you to then flex that information, but those required pieces are what the appraisal teams are required then to appraise. And I see we got questions coming in. I'm monitoring those, and we will get to those questions shortly. So pilot results. We have 2 classes that come out now with AIM. They're available now. We've already been running classes, and we did the first ones at the Capability Creates event in June. We had 5 successful deliveries, 35 total participants across 5 classes. That was our building organizational capability. That's our basic CMMI training to give people an understanding of the overview of the model. That is a 3-day class. And then to become a BAME or an AIM practitioner, we have our Building Artificial Intelligence Maturity course. That's a 1-day course. We've done 5 course deliveries for those. We've got 10 CMMI instructors participating with just under 50 people who participated in those classes. And then we went through and conducted multiple appraisals and multiple evaluation pilots. It spanned 27 of the 31 practice areas. So pretty much everywhere AIM was present in the model was piloted as a result. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of a detail here, and then we're going to get to the questions and so forth. I'm not going to read all these slides to you. They will be available to you. This is the results from IBM part of the pilot. And part of what we did, I was the lead appraiser for this pilot activity. It was a privilege to work with the IBM team on this. They were targeting using their IBM Client Zero approach, which basically means they were using AI on themselves, on the IBM consulting organization. And they had some targets that they were looking for, very specific targets. For example, they were looking at a $4.5 billion savings in productivity, or they were looking at a $2.2 billion, They exceeded that by 4.5 billion. So more than doubled what their target was, is what their achievement was. You can see here they also had included $10 million or 10 million hours of work that were automated, 15 points increased in customer satisfaction, and 20 points in employee engagement. These four functional areas that you can see: HR, modernizing finance, sales and support, and transforming procurement and supply chain, also had very clear targets, and they had very clear performance outcomes that they met. IBM looked at building their AI approach into this AI delivery platform they have called the IBM Consulting Advantage. And when we started the pilot with them, the 6 accounts that we worked with and the 4 support functions that you can see here across 4 different geographies, they were actually using 26 different agents to support the entire life cycle of their consulting services to customers. By the time we finished 2 weeks later, that number jumped from 26 to 58 agents. That's how fast they were adopting AI in these clients. And these were direct work with customers. And you can see the practice areas that were involved here. We covered Gov, II, process change management, the 2 data quality ones, and several of the ones around development, like testing, peer reviews, and so forth. The one that really jumped out interesting to me, peer reviews. If you think about it, when you're using agents, you have now this idea of digital labor or digital workforce. A peer review can be between 2 AI agents, an AI and a human, or 2 humans, or an AI and a human. That is a brand new way to look at how peer reviews are done, and AI has changed the world and a lot of other aspects of CMMI for us. So CMMI is keeping up with that. The findings and learning that we had here, we looked at multiple ways to tie the impact of experimentation for AIM, but tie it to how you're getting business outcomes. So not just doing contests and hackathons and games for the sake of games, but actually to yield real business results. So that as AI assets are deployed, you get this 1 + 1 greater than 2 synergy as you move forward. AI is there, and this is the application of what IBM saw AI AIM doing for them. It helped to envision and establish an AI strategy for them, deploy architecture at the agentic enterprise level, transforming their data, but reimagining the entire workflow, the entire life cycle to get the right level of autonomy, and then using AI as a living capability, understanding that you have to institutionalize that, govern it, and oversee it. One of our other pilots was Infosys. Infosys also participated in this activity. You can see the practice areas that they looked at here: requirements development, technical solution governance, and so forth. They saw some really significant outcomes as well. Testing productivity increased by 22%, software build workload reduced by 15 to 20%, and with AI-powered knowledge management, their work order processing time was reduced by 50%. And you can see some of the quotes. All of these case studies are going to be available. IBM's is in its final stages, but this Infosys case study and my third one here, GTSC, this is a government contracting organization here in the United States. They were our third pilot. All of these case studies are available on our website. If you just Googled CMMI AIM, you'll be able to get to it. We will provide you some links as well. But what this did was show organizations where they're targeting. And one of our questions I know that came in, a lot of organizations are considering ISO 42001. 2 of our organizations were looking at that as part of the pilot. And what they found was that AIM actually enabled them to do a better job at adopting 42001. It became much better in terms of performance outcomes, and they moved beyond this compliance mindset to actually getting real business value out of their adoption. It actually helped them do ISO 42001 much faster and much cheaper than that they'd been doing it alone. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a second, and I want to show you something that we're pretty excited about, which is our new CMMI model viewer, and then we're going to go right into Q&A after that. So as I mentioned before, CMMI used to be a book and a PDF, and now it's an interactive data model. And we're doing that for many reasons. One is so that we can actually keep the model more current with what's happening in industry. So we've moved, those of you familiar with DevSecOps, we borrowed a page from that and basically said, how can we do continuous development, continuous deployment of the CMMI content? The model viewer is our answer to that. So you'll see that the interface looks somewhat familiar. It's those of you familiar with the previous version, but there's a lot of new features here. Better search capability. You can filter on organization, the data. You can actually set up your own content. For example, I did one here saying I have a virtual supplier, which covers 11 practice areas. You can do bookmarks. I did bookmarks on these here so that I can go back and look at them at any time. You can do notes. These notes are all available to you offline. And that is one of the features. You can actually take the model viewer offline. So if you're going into an environment where you have no internet connection or you're in a secured facility, you can still get access to the model viewer. And when you come back, all of your notes, all your content will get synced up to those. Now, there's a couple other things. The glossaries here, the overview, the practice areas. I'll just show you very quickly. Here's risk one that we looked at before. So you can see it shows you the required PA information, the PA summary tables, and then if you go down, you can see the context-specific information. And here's the AI content-specific information for risk. So this would be required information when you go through an appraisal process, just to, again, to go back to that. The last thing I want to show you is our CMMI crosswalks. And we're pretty excited about these. You can see here we've got 23053, 23894, and 31000. So that's the machine learning AI ISO standard, the machine learning risk standard, and the risk standard 31000, as well as 42001. So you can see that there's a summary here. We talk about how CMMI maps to the various factors and the clauses in those other domains and those other models and frameworks. But it also gives you the ability to actually close up and look and say, I want to see the detailed mapping on how this works. So show me a view sorted by CMMI to the ISO clause. And we used a NIST approach for identifying whether the practice was a superset, subset, and so forth. These mappings are now available in the model viewer, and we're in the process of actually integrating them right now so that you can actually see the model content right next to the ISO standard that we're mapping to. So they're like side by side, which gives you the ability to take one integrated approach to how you're doing your ISO adoption and your CMMI adoption. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're looking forward to see actually releasing. There are two other bundles that are coming out, one on security and one on quality, which would be like ISO 9000 and so forth. So these are just some of the summarized features that I just showed you in the model viewer. All right, so CMMI appraisal, scoping the OU, and we're getting close to time here, so I'm going to move through some of these very quickly. All stages of the life cycle for an AI solution in scope for an appraisal has to be included in the scope. And basically what we found, early appraisal planning activities is critical. We have a randomly generated sample that we require as part of this. It's generated 60 days in advance. The lead appraiser will work with the sponsor and the organizational unit coordinator to identify the objectives, and that's really where this starts. You start with that business objective level and say, what am I hoping to get out of, in this case, my AI adoption? And then how do I scope my appraisal objectives to that? What are the sampling factors that go along with that? We have 6 of those. 2 of them are required. The domain and type of work must be included. And then it's broken down into, okay, what are the values of those? What domains are included? What's the scope of work in the OU where AIM or AI is being used? What are those 4 of the type of AI being used? How do they categorize into those 4 usage scenarios? And that's a critical piece. And then what are the process roles? And that can include both human and digital roles in it. So these are all the same approach that we currently take with CMMI appraisals. It's just now got the AI approach and flavor added to it. If you think about it, it's a validity analysis and a flow down process. You start at the top with what are your business objectives for your AI outcomes? What are the governance things that you have in place? What are the usage scenarios that you have? What solutions and tools and systems are you putting in place? And then what is some of the AI infrastructure related to governance training? What are the organizational processes in place? And what are the performance outcomes you're looking for? And we have required information now in the performance tool that's included as part of that. This just gives you another view of what I just showed you. I'm not going to go through this in detail. It's essentially a decision tree for the domains. You can see at the top here, development and services are required for AIM appraisals. And from there on out, data and security also required. But then the rest of them, these are the basic questions you need to ask to say, for example, do I have a supplier who's providing an AI solution that's part of what I deliver to my customer? If the answer to that is yes, then supplier management would be in scope for that AIM appraisal. And that's just an example of how this decision tree works. AI is in multiple activities across the life cycle, and we're looking at this from an appraisal perspective. We're looking at every step of the life cycle. So it's all from problem identification, data collection, model development, model training, verifying the AI model, deploying it, and making sure that you're continuing to monitor. So every aspect of this 7-step life cycle is included in AI and in AIM. These are those usage scenarios. Again, we have a appraisal planning tool that enables organizations to identify this very quickly. It helps them determine the AI context, the usage scenario, how to map the AI processes to the organizational standards, and define OU and scope. Now, I want to say one thing again very clearly. You can use, and maturity levels are targeted to level 3 as they always have been. So it's organizational note, but you can get an AIM level 1, you can get an AIM level 2 at the project or individual functional group level, just like you can now through a capability level approach. And that's one of the things that we think is going to be pretty powerful about AIM, is it'll allow organizations to target, for example, sampled projects, and then figure out how to best deploy that and scale it to the organizational unit, the group that's being appraised, but also to the organization itself. So AIM is laid out in a very logical evolutionary pathway. Governance and II are included as part of that. And we include the performance report that basically covers all the aspects of how AI performance results are achieved. Now, one of the things that we get, a lot of people have asked me about, okay, what are some of the key measures that you're looking for in AI? This is an example. These are examples only. You can go well beyond this, but these are examples, measures. This is actually covered in MPM practice area, but it's also covered in our performance report as example information. So things like model quality, system quality, business operations, adoption, fairness, accountability, transparent ethics, all of these things you have to consider when you're adopting AI. Now we have those 2 classes, and I've got 2 slides showing you that, but I want to get through those and basically tell you there are courses coming up. I'm recapping now. This is why we think AIM can win now. It's ready, it's going. The pilot results have shown overwhelming positive results. So with that, I'd like to jump right into Q&A. We've got about 9-10 minutes left here. And I see we've got a few questions already tied up here. Folks, do you want me to just go through and start answering some of those questions, or are there some that you would see come that are more important than others?
Sure. So, Ron, the first question is about how does an organization track its innovation and creative thinking practice area in AI-enabled framework, and also data security part and deployment? So how do we handle that? Or it is through the API that the client subscribes to?
Yes, so that's covered through multiple practice areas in the model. So requirements development is clearly a core practice area. That's where all of this starts. So whatever your data security requirements are, your deployment, the target environments you're looking for. So other things like product integration, verification and validation would all come into play for part of that. And the pilots that we had covered all 3 of those practice areas, and that's where a lot of organizations are seeing AI use. So the deployment of the AI models to projects and organizations come into place there, but the governance and implementation infrastructure, process change management, and process asset development are also critical practice areas to actually enable this from a deployment perspective? Great question.
Sure. So the second point is from Rakesh. He's asking, is it useful for AI solution deployers?
Yes, that fourth scenario that I talked about, so companies who are building AI solutions, you can use AIM as well. I'll go back to the IBM example and the fact that we started with 26 of their agents for these 6 functions that we looked at. IBM put a lot of money into training their people and letting them experiment with AI. But the experimentation was tied to business outcomes. It wasn't just experiment for the sake of experimenting. It was a learning opportunity, to be sure, but it also was, how does it enable the business for the client so that the client's getting better outcomes? So they had an entire group doing AI, and they were part of the appraisal. They were part of the pilot. And it is highly useful to them because it gives them this disciplined approach for getting repeated performance out of the AI solution.
Sure. The next is from Arun Kumar. If we are planning to go for ISO 42001 certification in our organization, should we also pursue CMMI AIM framework? We are already at level 3 development.
I would say yes, very, very strongly yes. As I said, 2 of our pilot organizations actually were using and adopting 42001. And what they found was that AIM actually helped them do a better job at implementing 42001 so that they went beyond compliance and got better performance outcomes. The other key piece is, rather than having 2 separate processes for doing 42001 and the CMMI practice, it was able to be done in a single process approach. So one process to cover multiple standards, that's a critical piece, and it's something that I think CMMI does extremely well with its open architecture.
Yeah. One more question related to 42001. Does CMMI AIM model addresses AI governance, AI security, or both? Which practice?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they talk about which practice areas are applicable to the SVC and dev appraisals.
So practice areas, let me go back in my slides here and I can just show you real quick here. So the practice areas where security come involved would be right here, the security domain. We have 2 practice areas there. Enabling security, that's where you set up all the functions, the controls, and so forth that you need. And then managing security threats and vulnerabilities. This goes up to level 4 practice. That's where you're doing predictive modeling, security, and identifying and monitoring security threats and vulnerabilities. And then the data domain, this is the predecessor from the DMM days, the old DMM model, but there's a lot more in it now that we add. It includes things like data quality and data management. There's a whole series of practices that go along with that. And then with any other appraisal that you do in AIM, you have to pick, as I said, the 4 practice areas and services, or the 2 in development, so product integration, technical solution, along with these 4. You can do them together. IBM looked at both when we did their pilot, and I believe Infosys looked at both as well. Great questions.
One more question from Praveen. That last question was from Santosh Kumar. The next question is about what is the relevance of risk practice area, given that enterprise is now monitoring overall performance from a risk perspective. So how we talk about the risk relevance?
Risk is, in all of the studies and research we did on AI, risk was one of those things that became very prevalent from the very beginning. So there's a lot of great content in the risk practice area right now, the risk management, not risk and opportunity management practice area. But it's woven throughout the model as well. So you'll see how risk is kind of the driver, the key pillar to it. But things like the governance practice area, implementation infrastructure, training on risk, all those things come into play. And then where risks is coming from, right? Risk can come from security. Risk can come from a virtual environment, from a supply chain, from people not being trained properly. All of those are tied into how you're adapting and deploying your AI. And risk is very prevalent, which is the reason we have in that standard one of the bundles that we picked for the crosswalk. I showed it to you very briefly. ISO 31000 is actually mapped in there as well now. That's the risk and opportunity management ISO standard. So we have a mapping now between CMMI and ISO 31000 because it's that important and that critical. So that's a great call out.
Next question from Shilpa is about we are using LLMs like Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. Then do Google, Anthropic, OpenAI become suppliers?
Potentially, yes. Right? If they're developing something for you and you're going to hand that off to a customer and you say you're going to put your Claude application into what you're handing off to a customer, if there's potential risk, if there's potential capability outcomes that are related to that, then absolutely that would be included as part of that. It goes back, however, to that funnel that I talked about, the ability to say, what are my appraisal objectives? It's okay to initially say, I just want to see where we are. I don't necessarily want to target level 4 or 5 or 3 right now. I just want to see where we are on AIM. So you can do that benchmarking at a capability level, at a single project level, or at the entire organization. And CMMI gives you that flexibility to go the small or to the full scale.
The next is about the PPM example. Any example? It's from
yes. We saw a couple of examples of this. So for those of you who don't know, process performance models, it's a level 4, level 5 term. And process performance models from a high maturity perspective in CMMI is based on the understanding that you have stable historical baselines, process performance baselines, that can be then used to do predictive modeling. The one that we saw the most on this was, and I'm going to stay on this slide, was right here on managing security threats and vulnerabilities. What IBM and a couple of the others had were basically, they had predictive modeling to see where AI was introducing new threats and vulnerabilities in the system. And the AI was actually addressing the vulnerabilities, bringing it to the attention of the SMEs, saying, this is something we need to do. I think this is how we fix it. The SME would verify it, and then they would test it and put it in place. So those are some great examples of where we saw process performance models. I'm sure there will be others as we see people adopt the model. I would expect we'd see some that would come out of verification and validation. Use of AI in software testing is extensive, but use of AI in manufacturing is extensive. There's going to be a lot of examples where we'll see those same sorts of baselines and models as well.
The next is, can you feed the AIM framework into a LLM like Gemini, send it to your PA implementation evidence, and can it give tentative maturity level details?
It's funny you asked that question. We're actually working on that very thing as I speak. So we're working right now with one of our companies to actually put an AI agent in place to help do those very things. So not only CMMI AIM talks about how to assess AI maturity, but we're using it to assess how do we use AI within the ecosystem of CMMI. How can it help to improve appraisal processing? How can it be better to help organizations adopt? If I have a problem in my organization, can I ask an agent, what's the model tell me about how to fix this problem? All those things are things that we're working on right now. Steve and I are working with a couple of partners who are doing that very thing for us, and we're really excited to have those roll out fairly soon in the near future. Now, I will tell you, those of you who are going to get a model viewer access license, and the model is now available through a license. There's enterprise license and individual licenses. AIM is available in what we call Model Viewer Plus. Yes, there is a fee for that to help model pay for itself. It's a nominal fee. We actually reduced the fee when we launched this. And one of the things that will be in there is we do have IP protections and policies. So you won't be able to just take the content and load it into a model. That would require a software license and an agreement with the CMMI Institute in Osaka. Well, we do have those things in place. We are working with a couple organizations who want to do that. So if that's something of interest, we would be happy to entertain those discussions.
Sure. Next is from Manjit. How can CMMI AIM can help companies move from AI pilots to governed, scalable, value-driven AI implementation across engineering and operations?
This is one of the ones that I think I'm most excited about, but I think it's also something we don't necessarily promote that well from a what can CMMI do for you. Most organizations, the most common maturity level target is level 3. That's about 80% of all appraisals, those 25,000 appraisals that you heard me talk about. Another 20% are high maturity, level 4 and 5. But here's the beauty about CMMI. You can take a level 1 and a level 2 approach to target what you're seeing on these pilot efforts. Like if it's a single project, experimentation, you can take the model and skinny it down to just that content and look at how it's working. But then you have all the breadcrumbs and all the pathway that you need to scale it to the organizational level. That is the key power to me of AIM, that you can take these small scale experimentation levels and do a methodical way to govern it across the entire organization so you get the kind of performance outcomes that the organization's expecting from those experimentations. Very powerful when you think about it. So AIM level 1, AIM level 2, all are options as part of that. That's the approach that I would take.
Yeah, and Srividya is asking, is it possible that we go for dev level 5 and AIM level 3?
That's a question that is going to be a little bit more difficult to answer, and the answer is probably not. You can certainly add dev in there for your level 5 and then add AIM onto it as well. But because AIM is woven into the dev practice areas, it's going to be hard to separate that out. So those would be coupled together, not separated.
Okay, and last question. Again from Praveen, CMMI AIM is actually equivalent of QMS, ISMS, and AIMS. So where is the emphasis on this, on the AIM activities?
I'd say the emphasis, first and foremost, and this is a great question to wrap up with, first and foremost, the emphasis is on business performance outcomes. CMMI is all about taking every aspect of an organization's capabilities, from governance to implementation to individual capabilities like development, services, supply chain management, security, and so forth, integrating them together into a single framework so that the organization has a good insight into not only how well they're working, but how well they're performing, right? It's how are they meeting those objectives, the organization? Back to those questions that I showed you at the beginning, the Gartner study and the risks that come from AI adoption. CMMI addresses every single one of those top 10 lists for both benefits and risks so that you can actually get the kind of outcomes you're hoping for. And again, you can do Google searches or AI agent searches on how is AI being used in business, what kind of outcomes are getting, and you'll see stories all over the map. The ones that are actually seeing real results are the ones who are following these kinds of best practices that the CMMI has codified in AIM.
Sure. So that's it's almost 6:05 now, so we'll stop here. And
I
thank you.
think what we can do perhaps is we can take some of these questions offline via email. And Anand, Kalpana, you can drop in your email IDs in the chat for everyone to get right up to you on. And then we'll respond to some of these questions via email. But thank you, Ron. Thank you for a wonderful session. Thank you, everyone. We're quite excited about what the CMMI AIM brings in terms of resilience, in terms of governance. We're very happy as being one of the partners who signed up their first AIM appraisal, and we should be doing India's first AIM appraisal as well, hopefully, if no one beats us to it. But look forward to engaging with all the participants further after the session as well. We remain available for all your questions, queries, discussions. We're seeing a lot of traction. We can see a lot of questions around how to implement. We are already level 5. Do we go to AIM level 5 directly? It's an evolving scenario, as Ron also explained. Many of these questions will get answered, in the due time to come. But look forward to hearing from all of you. Please send in your feedback as well to us, and look forward to the questions. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Steve, once again for your time. This was absolutely useful and helpful, and look forward to conducting many more such sessions for our community at large. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul team. Very much appreciated.